Right, thank you for joining us today. And our apologies that we are unable to show our presenter today. Apologies, you are unable to see me, and that's because we have one of our apps that is down. Please do take our apologies for that. But we promise you, as usual, that we will have an informative and productive session for today. We'll go straight right on to the event that has been happening that everybody seems to must have heard about, and that is the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. We'll be showing some moving images. We advise viewers discretion. Some of it could be horrendous. So please be advised before we kick this one on. As Taliban falls into the hands of the Taliban, we had Afghans that made an attempt to leave the country. And you can see from that terrible piece our people that hung on the US Air Force plane. We had that about three Afghans fell off from the plane, and those were the ones that were hanging on the body of the aeroplane. So I'm going to show another one. Please do bear with us, and again, viewer discretion is advised.
دیگه باز شد بازار مردم دروازه هم باز شده مردم میخوایم برن این دروازه دیگه این داخل میدان
Right, many thanks to Al Jazeera for that piece. Contrary to earlier reports, about 12 people have lost their lives during the evacuation, has now been confirmed even by the United States. However, people have been asking that as of July 8th, 2021, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, was asked if the fall of Afghanistan was imminent. And he said, no. Let's get on to the video.
Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So what is the level of confidence that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place.
And do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable. So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Well, unfortunately, that is where we are now. The Taliban has taken over Afghanistan. Of course, there are some districts that are still not in control of the Taliban. But then people have also been asking, the United States, who pulled out from Afghanistan hastily and without proper coordination, was the same United States not the sponsor of the Taliban and the other extremist groups? Now, Al Jazeera also has this piece that we've been able to secure. Just sit back and let's look through this.
Talk about the Taliban. They've been fighting the government and its allies in Afghanistan for 20 years. Today, they seem stronger than ever.
The Taliban have adapted their tactics. They've gotten more brutal.
And now the Americans are going home.
It's time to end the forever war.
Biden wants his troops out by September 11th, and that could strengthen the Taliban even more. So who exactly are the Taliban? How is it that they have so much power? And why are people worried they'll take over Afghanistan again? To understand the Taliban, you need to know what happened in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Afghan guerrillas called the Mujahideen fought a Soviet occupation for 9 years. They even got money and weapons from the CIA. In 1989, the Soviets pulled out, and the next few years were pretty chaotic. By 1992, there was a full-blown civil war with tribal leaders fighting for power. 2 years later, a militia called the Taliban started getting attention. Many of its members had studied in conservative religious schools in Afghanistan and across the border in Pakistan, and some of them had also fought as Mujahideen. And they had their own plans for the country.
The people were so frustrated with this lawlessness, and the Taliban came marching along from Kandahar to city to city to city, saying, we're gonna make the cities safe for you again.
By 1996, the Taliban had seized the capital. They declared Afghanistan an Islamic emirate and started imposing their own strict interpretation of Islamic law.
They were like, you can't watch movies, you can't listen to music, women can't go to school, and other than doctors, they can't go to work. You have to wear a certain type of clothes, you have to have a certain kind of beard, it just became more and more restrictive.
Then 9/11 happened. The US was after after al-Qaeda's leader Osama bin Laden, who was hiding out in Afghanistan with the Taliban's help. The Taliban said they wanted proof he was behind the attack, and when they refused to hand him over immediately, the Americans invaded.
The Taliban will pay a price.
Within a couple of months, the Taliban were forced out of power, and Afghanistan got a new interim government. 3 years later, it got a new constitution, and Hamid Karzai was elected president. While that was going on, the Taliban had regrouped. They wanted foreigners out, and they wanted back in. What followed were years of devastating conflict, and it's still going on. More than 40,000 Afghan civilians killed, at least 64,000 Afghan military and police, and more than 3,500 international soldiers dead. The US alone has spent almost $1 trillion on the war and reconstruction projects. And after all that, Afghanistan is still deeply unstable, and the Taliban are still a force to reckon with.
They're an insurgency fighting international occupation as they see it. They're fighting an illegitimate government in Kabul as they see it. And they're a voice of resistance to, as they see it, return Afghanistan to a more pure Islamic society.
Today, the Taliban have as many as 85,000 full-time fighters and training camps across the country, and the area they control has been growing. Right now, the Taliban control 1/5 of Afghan districts. On top of that, half of all districts are considered contested, which means the Taliban have a strong presence in many of those places too. And they control parts of some major highways.
Whoever controls the roads in Afghanistan, pretty much controls the country. They've managed to basically give people the sense that, wherever you go, you'll have to deal with the Taliban.
They're also well organized. The Taliban's leader is Haibatullah Akhundzada. He heads a council that oversees about a dozen commissions in charge of things like finance, health, and education. Below them are local officials in charge of everyday services. So in a way, the Taliban have set up a parallel state. They even run their own courts, which can be pretty popular among Afghans.
Justice has been a huge gap in Afghanistan, and where the state courts have failed, these Sharia courts are able to come into communities who may even be reticent to support the Taliban, but they offer justice.
All that control has also made them rich. According to Taliban members and a UN committee, they make close to $1.5 billion a year. They've always made a lot of money from growing opium poppies and the drug trade, but they found even more ways to generate income. Last year, they made millions from mining and trading minerals and even producing methamphetamine. They also have their own tax collection system and receive funding from abroad, although suspected sources like Pakistan and Iran deny it. Over the years, the international community has tried to get the Taliban and the Afghan government talking, or at least to talk about talking. There was even a meeting in the Maldives at one point. And during a brief Eid ceasefire in 2018, Taliban and Afghan soldiers were seen mingling in Kabul, even praying together. But overall, peace negotiations haven't achieved much.
The Ghani government has been incredibly antagonistic and sees the Taliban as a real existential threat to everything that they represent.
The Taliban have been quite adamant on their demand that they want the re-establishment of their regime that was toppled by the US intervention.
The question now is, what will happen when the roughly 10,000 US and NATO soldiers leave? Will the Afghan government be able to survive? And what will the Taliban do? Well, the prospects for peace and stability aren't looking great. Even while peace talks have been going on, almost 1,800 Afghan civilians have been killed or injured in the first 3 months of this year. That's almost 30% more than last year. There's also been a wave of assassinations that people blame on the Taliban.
Targeted killings continue. Civilian government workers, employees, but also activists and journalists.
It's to make people feel less and less safe, less and less secure, to sort of send back the message repeatedly that your government is not protecting you.
Afghans are already asking themselves what life might be like if the Taliban take over again. Will they rip up the Constitution, which protects basic human rights?
Will women be able to travel without a male guardian? Will women be able to be judges? Will a woman be able to run for president? There's a lot that is ambiguous and unknown.
In a New York Times op-ed, the Taliban tried to clear things up, saying they want to build an Islamic system where the rights of women that are granted by Islam, from the right to education to the right to work, are protected. And right now, there are some places under Taliban control where girls are in school, but not everywhere.
It's really localized. I mean, in some areas, we know that the local commanders are a bit more flexible when it comes to women's education. In some areas, they are not at all.
So how much support is there for the Taliban? Well, according to a major public opinion study done in 2019, 85% of people said they had no sympathy for them.
I've traveled to a large proportion of this country. The vast majority of people I speak to don't have a favorable view of the Taliban.
و اما اون طالبه که در ذهن من کابوس بد و خوابهای شیرین کودکانه مرا به یک خاطرات تلخ مبدل ساخته هرگز نمیپذیرم.
People may not like them, but the Taliban know what they want, and they've shown that they're in it for the long haul. So far, their strategy seems to have worked. Al Jazeera is always monitoring the situation in Afghanistan and the negotiations here in Doha. So check out our website for the latest and YouTube for reports from our correspondents on the ground. I'll see you next week.
Yes, thanks again to Al Jazeera for the informative piece about the Taliban. Now, from what we've heard, the people were asking, what would Afghanistan be like if the Taliban takes over? Now, the Taliban have taken over, and they are trying to reach the outside world to say that they are not with the ideology of the past, that some of the ideologies have been adjusted. But in the next few weeks, in the next few months, we'll definitely know what the government of Taliban will be in Afghanistan. And on that, we'll be moving on to the other section of the program for today. Please do stay on with us because we'll be right back. Yeah, you're most welcome back again. And on this session, I'll be having Mr. or Alagba, as we call him, Femi Odedeyi, on this program. So just stay on with us. OYTV. Right. You are most welcome to the program, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate all those who are listening and those who will continue to listen. Thank you very much.
Right. Again, let me give apologies for the technical itch we have here. You see that you are unable to see me.
Yeah.
But you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So don't feel alone. Don't feel alone on the screen today.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we're going to start with, because I don't want us to pick it from the Afghanistan because of the connection that we're going to make later with what is happening in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So the first aspect of it that we're going to deal with, you've mentioned severally on this program about what you call people-based political philosophy as different from party-based political philosophy. For the purpose of our people, because I know that electoral activities are already taken off in Nigeria. From INEC releasing lists of aspirants that have been checked and passed, to each political party having meetings within themselves ahead of the next election. So when we look at what has been happening in Nigeria, let's say from the time we got back into what we can call democracy, as different from what we had in the 1960s. You've spoken about the sort of benefits that people could have when we actually have representatives, political representatives that are answerable to the people, that are representing the people and not the political party. But some people believe that the political party, if they set up their manifesto, that those manifestos are also based on maybe their interaction with the people. So now putting the two together, the people-based political ideology and party-based, that is political party-based political philosophy. Now, what are the benefits? Why do you think that the one that is people-based is much more better and beneficial than the one that is party-based?
Oh, well, I mean, by definition, a people's-based philosophy and organization is more beneficial because those who represent the people are directly impacted, and they are definitely will become responsible to what they represent. Now, before we get to that point, a political party, also by definition, is supposed to represent certain interests in the society. All political parties claim to transcend economic, religious, social, and cultural divisions in the society. Most of them do make that claim, like, all these Democratic parties or Republican parties, not the Republican Party of the US, but, a Republican system of government. So because they make that claim that they transcend the divisions or the contradictions in the society, they now project themselves as being representative of that society. But most of the time, we discover that they have actually hijacked the power to make decisions from the people and placed it in the hands of the political parties. And I will give you, we can always use the comparison between the regional Nigeria's First Republic, in the regional system before independence and after independence, that despite all the atrocities committed by British colonial rule, by the time the agitations for independence came into fruition, they held consultations with the representatives of the peoples, not the political parties. There were different political parties at that time, the NNDP of Herbert Macaulay, and I think some other parties in Lagos and stuff like that. But the people that eventually began the negotiations were actually representatives of the people. By the time they formed political parties in 50, 51, and then the action group came to power in the Western region, if you look at the philosophy of the action group, it says freedom for all, life more abundant, which was translated into Yoruba to mean Afenifere. And what did they do? It sprang up from the original Legbe Omo Oduduwa, which was formed in 1945, which was the expression of the will and aspirations of Yoruba people. So it can actually be said that they represent the will of the people at that point. The NCNC was largely a Yoruba party also at its formation, not as a political party, but as a movement. And then it became a political party when the elections were coming up. And then, over the course of time, because of the organization, structural organization of the NCNC, you have many ethno-national organizations that came together to form that coalition, National Council of Nigerian Citizens. And the dominant ones among them was called the Igbo State Union. And then they became dominant in the NCNC. And one of their major objectives at that time was to deny the Yoruba people, not only in the NCNC, but also their political aspirations. So they went about, they formed what they call a Yoruba Federal Union to counter the Egbe Omoduduwa, which failed. In fact, by the time they had the elections and stuff like that, when they were going to elect members to the House of Representatives from the Western Regional House of Assembly, the Yoruba members from Lagos, the NCNC won all the elections in Lagos, but the Yoruba members in Lagos refused to vote for Azikiwe to represent the NCNC at the House of Representatives. That was how Azikiwe went back to the East to become the premier. So all these things show that by claiming to represent, to aggregate the interests of the people, the action group was able to, quote unquote, sell itself as promoting the general Yoruba interest, even though there were differences within Yoruba land between different Yoruba communities and all that, but they were able to aggregate it and present it as, because there is no one that will oppose freedom for all, life no abundance, which was also taken from the existential experience of Yoruba people, live and let live, welfareism, love your neighbor as it were, which was a cultural essence, Omoluabi essence in Yoruba land, even though the opposite also exists. But generally, there is a perception. It's like an obvious thing that there are certain things you are expected to exhibit simply because you are a Yoruba person. So you don't need to be trained for it, you just grow up with it. So it's a cultural thing. And the action group aggregated all those things, which the NCNC tried to abort. So by the time, so I use that as a background. So now, when we now use what I will call the Western concept of political parties, the political parties now come, saying they claim to represent the society, but they represent particular interests in that society. So the political party actually strengthens and deepens divisions within the society. And the political party now becomes the mouthpiece, the vehicle for the resolution of that conflict. And therefore, when they get to power, it is the driving force of that political party will now dictate what it does, not the interests of the people. Why? Because it started out from the perception that there is a division in the society and they represent a particular solution to that division. So they will attract their membership and leadership from that part of the division that they represent. So that's why we call them, or they call them, monetized politics now, because one, if you don't have money, you can't be a member. You can't even aspire to anything. By the time they ask you to bring millions to purchase a form, then you know where that is coming from. So the political parties have largely become the vehicle for the rich, for the wealthy, and the aspiring wealthy to perpetuate itself, because that's the only way it can sustain itself. So the people, on the other hand, lack that political representation as a people. So, like I said earlier, when you say when you see a Yoruba person, there are certain things you expect without any question. You just expect it that, okay, this guy calls him or herself a Yoruba person. This is how he or she is expected to behave under this circumstance. If the behavior doesn't flow in that direction, you will not only question that behavior, but you will begin to wonder whether, are you really a Yoruba person? In fact, most of the time it's the other way around. People will first of all ask you whether you are a Yoruba person before even questioning your behavior, because they have assumed that your Yoruba-ness qualifies and defines your behavior. But on the political stage, there's no political party that fits into that mold. So, and then, of course, we are living in a globalized environment, so we should expect that. So when a party comes in and says, I'm going to provide this, I'm going to provide that, I'm going to provide blah, 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 then the people need to look at, okay, if you are going to provide it, who will it benefit? Yes, everybody will benefit one way or the other if they actually provide it. But in actual sense, in real terms, who will be the beneficiary? So when you say you want to bring in foreign investment, direct foreign investment to provide infrastructure, to do this, to do that, the question is, who will pay for this infrastructure? It is the people. And if the people are going to pay for it through their taxes or their natural resources, mineral resources that we are selling off, what again do they get in return? So that also flows into the question of how do you define economic development? So that when all these things come into play, a people's oriented party, yes, we have to relate with international agencies. And again, another example, because we have gone through these things before. So this is not rocket science. When the cocoa in the Western region at that time, the cocoa farmers, they were competing against the cocoa exchanges in the world. So what did the government do? They set up a cocoa marketing board. They would buy the cocoa, they mediate between the prices, they mediated the prices between the cocoa farmers and the world market, so that they are able to adjust, so that the cocoa farmers will not suffer. So that was an economic paradigm, a people's economic paradigm. The same way they set up the National Bank as a developmental bank, long before it became fashionable. They set up, and then of course we know the central government destroyed it or tried to destroy it. So, but looking at the cocoa thing, that brought up for the cocoa farmers and the communities that sustain them, and that they also sustain. Because if you also remember, we had a lot of community schools, modern schools, secondary schools that were built by funds raised in that community. And most of these farmers belong to that community. So they were running that economic paradigm until the military came in, and then they introduced the SAP eventually. When they messed up everything, they introduced SAP, and the first victims of the structural adjustment program were the same cocoa farmers. So when a political party comes out and says, we are following what they call liberal economic policies, what they are telling you is that they will continue to sustain the suppression of the cocoa farmers. If a people's oriented platform emerges, it will start from the opposite direction, because our condition means there must be a change in the global economic order. Otherwise, we'll just be running around in circles. So I don't know whether I've veered off the discussion, but the essence of it is that for the people to own the process of either political party formation or its operation. And the only way they can do that is when the cultural and social experiences of the people are brought to bear on the existence of those political parties. So when you take a political party that is representing or claims to be representing Yoruba people in Nigeria, for example, but needs the validation of someone living in Sokoto or Kano or Maiduguri, then you have taken it away from the hands of the people, because that party is not responsible to the Yoruba people. There are no cocoa farmers in Sokoto, for example. So what will benefit cocoa farmers in Yoruba land is not appealing to, even when there are no cocoa farmers, they won't even understand what you are talking about. What will benefit whatever it is? They used to say that Nigeria, the pyramids, the cotton, is it cocoa pyramid? Cotton or whatever pyramids, not pyramids, palm oil and all the rest of them. So what will benefit them from their economic reality is different from what will benefit us from our economic reality. So political party systems and formations must be a reflection of these realities. And that doesn't mean we can't still negotiate our ways out, like if we say in the West, in Yoruba land, for example, we want to be selling petrol for free. I'm just using it as an extreme example. You have a car, go to the gas station, fill it up, and go away, if we can afford it. But then, we have the ports. So even if we have to import everything, it is right there with us. Sokoto has no ports. So we can't reasonably say, okay, because the people in Lagos can go to the gas station and get their gasoline for free, the people in Sokoto must also be able to do that. That's an extreme example. I'm not saying petrol is to afford.
I understand.
Yeah. So what we are now saying is that the aspirations and the experiences of the people differ, not only geographically, it's also cultural, and therefore it must reflect in the politics. So you can now, on the petroleum something, you can now say, because Lagos is close to the port and therefore the cost of petrol in Lagos will be this, you will now equalize it by paying people to take it to Sokoto so that they can buy it at the same price. It doesn't make any economic sense.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any cultural sense. So, and that is the reality we are facing in Nigeria or in Africa today, that we want to impose a paradigm that is contrary to our nature, rather than saying that we want to contribute to that paradigm. And if we don't have a consciousness of contribution to that paradigm, that is the world global economy, like what the Awolowo people did with the cocoa thing, if they had sustained it, cocoa will not have undergone the kind of pressure and things that it went through, and will not have succumbed to the structural adjustment program. And probably, we have cocoa industries at that time. And then, in terms of not just supplying raw materials, but also transforming it from the raw stage to consumables. We consume more chocolate than probably Switzerland that we sell the cocoa, and stuff like that. So these are the things that are tied to the formation and operation of political parties, and why they should become entrenched in the people's cultural and social and economic experiences, and not simply because that is the way it is done in the rest of the world, because we are not, the world is not unitary.
Yes.
So.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yes.
So, in essence, would it be your views that with the sort of unitary government that we have in Nigeria, although we call it, they say it's federalism,
They call it a union. They call it a union. I don't know where they got that from, but
So, as is now, is there the possibility of a people-based party surviving and progressing in Nigeria with the current structure?
one, no, because it won't even exist with the current structure. That's the defining term, the current structure, because they won't even allow you to exist. I mean, before you form a political party or before you exist as a political party, you have to have offices in all the states, all over the country. You have to have representatives in all the states. Your officers must also be represented. So if you have a Yoruba party, for example, and you want it to be registered and legalized, a Yoruba can be the chairman and the secretary and the treasurer. You have to find someone from somewhere to become the party of a Yoruba party. So by definition, it can't survive because it won't exist. I mean, no, it can't survive. Not that it can't exist. It depends on the qualification for existence. So if I say, or if we say, or if you say that you want to form a Yoruba political party, right? I'm just using it as an example. So if we say we want to form a political party, the first thing we have to decide is, one, we are not going to register it with the Nigerian government because it won't be registered. The way that is, if it is conceived, even if you call it a Yoruba party, without any other thing, they will just reject it. That you are forming what they call an ethnic party. So on the basis of even Yoruba being in the name is cause for disqualification or non-registration. So, and if you say you want to go around it and find somebody somewhere to represent somebody that you can manipulate, the Alliance for Democracy tried it. They split the party was split into two, and they never rose since that time. Because let's say you form the party now and you go to the north to pick a northern chairman, as an example. By the time they get to that northern chairman, he will claim control of the party. You, the Yoruba owners of the party, will start saying, no, you want to have another person. Then they will take you to court, and you can remain in that court for the next 50 years. So by definition, it can't work within that context. But that doesn't mean it can't exist and it can't succeed. So it depends on the motivation of the promoters or the purveyors. Because one, like in business, they say you want to open a bank account and they tell the bank, know your customers or something like that, a KYCC or something. So we say, okay, you know what you are faced with, that you are not going to be registered legally, but it is a necessity. So necessity confronts legality, as it were. So you now say, yes, you form the party in an open manner, not in an underground. Of course, what you will do will depend on the circumstances, but you let it be known to Yoruba people that there's a Yoruba political party in existence. And these are what we want, the manifesto and all the rest of it. We put that down. And you let the people know that, of course, it will not be registered, because not that we don't want it to be registered, but because these people don't even want us to exist. And by not wanting us to exist, they don't want you to exist. So the thing now is, whom are you going to confront? Who will that party confront? You are not going to contest elections because you won't be allowed to. But register. There will be parties in your land that will participate and conduct elections. So your first line of engagement will be with those parties that claim to represent Yoruba land in whatever form. And then you now position yourself against them. And so that the hearts and minds of Yoruba people will be tilted towards you. And this is not a question of politicians giving bags of rice and this and that. It goes beyond that. So by doing that, you are also sending a message to the central government that, you know, these things can develop in so many ways and in so many things that depending on the capacity and capability of the promoters, you can get to the point where you can actually become an alternative to what already to, you know, the party in existence and stuff like that. And then you carry on the battle from there. So I would say, to directly answer the question, I've said that it is no, these current circumstances will not favor it and will not allow it to succeed. But because you are acting contrary to the current circumstances, you can succeed based on your capacity and capability to succeed, because they exist to suppress you and you exist to neutralize them. Once that is clear in our minds, then there will be no, there will be no expectation of getting the central government, let us go and file a court case, maybe they will answer. No, all those things wouldn't matter. But your existence as a right is what we need to establish. And there are many ways one can do that if that is the next stage or where we have to go. Then we have to go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Before we leave this section, I want to relate this people-based versus party-based. I don't know whether it fits into what I want to say.
Okay.
Some few weeks back, the governors, Southwest governors, they sent, would they be their proposal also to the National Assembly, asking for some things for their states, you know, to how the country is going to be restructured and go. And I remember that there was one of the activists, I've forgotten the name, and the person said, but the governors never spoke to the people before putting those recommendations forward on behalf of the people. So that is one. Take that one as Fox example, Sam. Then the second one is there's always been the issue of resource control.
Yeah.
But of recent, there were some the PIB was signed into law by the president. And why the people in those areas were asking to have like about 5%, including the southern governors also said it should be 5%. But then from the National Assembly and the presidency, they said it's 3%.
Yeah.
So when we look at these two examples, is this something that we can use to actually look at the difference or some of the differences between a people-based political philosophy and a party-based political philosophy?
Yeah, certainly. Like I said earlier, the political parties, the current political parties claim to represent the people. So the governors, the Southwest governors and all that, claim that they have the mandate of Yoruba people because they voted them into office. That's the claim. And that is the basis on which they are acting. The same thing with the PIB, all the assembly members and all the rest. We are elected by our people to this purpose. Now, yes, they were elected, but at the time they were elected, these issues were not even on the table. Yes, they elected you and they delegated some responsibilities to you to act on their behalf. But when it comes to such fundamental issues as existential issues, it is incumbent on them. It is necessary for them to come back to the people and say, okay, because this thing will impact us more than, this is not a question of allocation or infrastructural development. I want to build roads. I want to build bridges and all that. It has to do with your existence. So what do we say? What do we do? Where do we go from here? They ought to have done that, to come back to the people to ask them, what do you want us to do? Or where do you want us to go? So what they did, both at the PIB and the Southwest governors level, is to appropriate, actually expropriate is the right word, expropriate the aspirations of the people and house it within themselves and claim that they have the authority to do all those things. So the people were left behind. And we can look at it from practical consequences. You have a PIB, petroleum industrial bill, what is it called?
Yes.
And the petroleum exists in certain areas. And the people have been suffering the effects, negative effects of petroleum exploration for years. And they had no voice in the petroleum, whatever bill. I mean, even the parties that claim to represent them should be ashamed of themselves for doing that. They now left it to some people to go and negotiate. Whether it is 5 or 1 or 10%, it's not even the issue. But the people whose lives are concerned. That was why Saruwiwa was killed. Many people, I mean, we don't need to restate what is happening in the Niger Delta.
Yes.
I mean, we all know it. The world knows it. Everyone knows it. And then you went to pass a bill that concerns them, and they had no say in it.
Oh, no.
I mean, that is the Southwest governors, we can even excuse them. Maybe we have been talking about the structure, and everybody has been talking about this and that. So they can say, okay, we collated all the views of all the people that have been talking about it. Afenifere, Yoruba Council of Elders, Ilana, we put them together. And they can even make that excuse. It's not a good excuse, but I'm saying they can even at least hide behind that. But there's no way to hide that petroleum bill because it's their life. The ecosystem had been damaged, probably almost beyond repair. And somebody had the effrontery to say that they are signing a bill without their input. So, I mean, if you look at it in that holistic manner, there is a major gulf between what the political parties represent and what the people's expectations are.
Wow.
And that is possible only because the people are yet to develop or establish their own platform for fighting their own battles. So it allows the political parties to get away with blue murder. For the Southwest governors, maybe it was Governor Akeredolu that was saying that where did the Yoruba reach a consensus? And when he was now leading the Yoruba governors to the National Assembly, he didn't even ask for that consensus.
That is it.
So, so you will see that because they have expropriated the will and the expectation of the people and housed it within their political party. So they will now, everything will now be subjected to what that political party wants and not what the people want. So one would have expected, okay, you want to go and present a memo to the... So ask the Yoruba people what they want. There's no big deal about it. And then on that basis, we present it, this is what my people want to. But no, the party has already decided on what it wants, and they now just want to do some mago-mago, like one next chairman said, mago-mago, and then put it down and say, okay, the people, and then they say, come and vote on what we have decided for you. That is what they call their own referendum.
Okay.
So I think that's about it sums it up, that there's no, that gulf is there. And the question is not even about bridging the gulf, but actually retaking what belongs to us.
To the people.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Listeners and viewers, we've been on to Mr. Femi Odedeyi, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. He will still be here with us. We'll go for this short break. And when we come back, we'll be looking at the fall of Afghanistan and the impact on Nigeria, both in the security and, of course, in the agitation for Yoruba liberation. And, of course, we'll also be looking at the ongoing Yoruba referendum petition. Do stay on with us. OYTV. Right, welcome back. I'm still right on here with Alagba Femi Odedeyi.
Thank you.
Ẹ ṣeun ẹ kú àtòwúrọ̀ sà.
Ẹ kú ẹ ṣé gan o.
Káwọn Yorùbá ipá gbọ́ Yorùbá díẹ̀.
Kò tí ì lọ tán lẹ̀.
Apologies again for our viewers. We've got technical hitch here, and that's why you're unable to see me on your screen. So going on, sir.
Yes.
We've seen the development in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And I will be playing a video, and I believe that is the video of Hillary Clinton. And then I will take I'll take our interview from there.
Okay.
Let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia. And we went to work. And it was President Reagan in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these mujahideen. And that's great. Let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated. They lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is, it wasn't a bad investment to end the Soviet Union, but let's be careful what we sow because we will harvest. So we then left Pakistan. We said, okay, fine, you deal with the stingers that we've left all over your country. You deal with the mines that are along the border. And by the way, we don't want to have anything to do with you. In fact, we're sanctioning you. So we stopped dealing with the Pakistani military and with ISI, and we now are making up for a lot of lost time.
We're building a relationship that just did not exist. I said in our last trip when you were with me that we had a huge trust deficit, in part because the United States had, to be fair, we had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. The Soviets left Afghanistan, and then we said, great, goodbye, leaving these trained people who were fanatical in Afghanistan and Pakistan, leaving them well armed, creating a mess, frankly, that at the time we didn't really recognize. We were just so happy to see the Soviet Union fall, and we thought, okay, fine, we're okay now. Everything's going to be so much better. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets.
Okay.
Right. So that is exactly what we have there. There are some words I want to pick from there. That let's be careful of what we sow today because we will harvest them.
Yeah.
Coming to Nigeria, when we had the Boko Haram at the startup in the northern part, because it happened in the northern part of Nigeria, and for some people believe that some of these extremism were allowed to flourish in the north for certain political benefits.
Yeah.
And then bringing it right on to the pre-2015 election.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't know what happened, but
Mhm.
after the 2015 election, in the course of that year, crossing into 2016, we saw the rise of another extreme group. And I think not until last year, when one of the now claimed to be bandits now spoke out to say that, no, you ship us into the country to come and do so thing for political benefits, and then you abandon us in the forest. Now, with all this network, we've had the Boko Haram, we have ISWAP Africa, we
Mhm.
have Fulani
Herdsmen,
herdsmen, herdsmen, terrorists. We now have these claim to be bandits. Now, if you now consider it with what has happened in Afghanistan today,
Yeah.
as of today, do you think that those extremist groups have now got a sort of energy or a sort of a hope that they could also achieve what has been achieved in Afghanistan? Is Nigeria, that's the first question. The second one is Nigeria looking at a tough nearest future in fighting these insurgents?
A what? Is Nigeria looking at?
Looking at a tough nearest future.
Okay.
Fighting this extremism.
Well, a lot of things are connected with the Afghan issue. Like Hillary Clinton said, they went there ostensibly to fight against the Soviet Union and all that and all that. But she missed a crucial point in the whole narrative, and that was because the American narrative about global affairs is always one-sided, based on the perception and the reality of American military power. That the Soviet Union did not collapse because they lost in Afghanistan, but they lost in Afghanistan because the Soviet Union had to collapse. But the Soviet Union had been in a state of tension since the 50s. They invaded Hungary. You know, this whole question of national liberation and all the rest of it had been a major problem in the Soviet Union. That was why they invaded Hungary in 1956. They invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, when those countries attempted to break away from the dominance and the control of the Soviet Union. So they sent in tanks and all that. And the same thing happened in Afghanistan in 1978, I believe, when the previous feudal system collapsed and the Communist Party of Afghanistan, which was directly controlled by Moscow, staged a coup and carried out, overthrew the government and became and that was how the Soviet Union came in. So by, around that 78, 79, up to the 80s, there had been a lot of rumblings within what used to be known as the Soviet bloc, the Eastern Bloc. We remember the Solidarity movement in Poland in 1980, which eventually led to the fall of, what's his name? The Polish Communist Party, the rise of Lech Walesa and all the rest of them. We also remember Romania and all the, so there had been and then, of course, by the time the leadership of the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, by the time, it was a sort of a gerontocracy, as it were. By the time it got to the point of Boris Yeltsin and Gorbachev rising in the hierarchy of the Communist Party, they started to try to appease these nationalist agitations, which led to perestroika and glasnost in Soviet Union, which we call restructuring in Nigeria. So it allowed many of the national republics in Soviet Union, Latvia, Estonia, and all the rest of them, to declare their independence from the Soviet Union, which also impacted on what the Soviet Union was doing in Afghanistan. So all these things contributed to the problem. And so when Clinton, now, yes, they set up their Mujahideen and all the rest of it to fight them, to do this, but they know, that is the United States government, they know that even if they had defeated the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, that is just part of the problem. Yes, the Soviet Union will have gone because Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are militarily close to the US. The US supplies them weapons and all this, and so through the back channels and all the rest of them. So they have all this information. I will assume that they have all this information. So with what has now happened, and it has no, like President Biden said, the only way they can sustain their presence there is to remain there for the next 200 years. They will defeat them. I mean, they will defeat Taliban if it came to war. But of course, what sense would that make? So they had to leave. So the import of it for us in Nigeria is that one, see, the Nigerian government, if you look at from, I think, 2011, actually, up to the present time, anytime the elections are approaching, you will see a marked rise in these terrorists, kidnappings, criminal attempts, and stuff like that. So when the elections come and the whoever is in government is able to probably negotiate with whoever is behind the terror, they will allow them some breathing space. So when the next election is coming, they will ramp it up again. So what we can deduce from that is that the Nigerian state, that is, the Nigerian state wants to sustain itself by any means necessary. So it will allow the terrorists and the ISWAP and all the rest of them to run riots in the country so that they can keep the people at bay. The people will be running helter-skelter. They won't be able to sit down to face that administration in power. So the state will retain itself. And then, of course, they will say they are building roads and bridges and all the rest of it so that they will not be able to counter them, and then they can solve. So the first thing the Nigerian state, that is the Nigerian government, if you can put it that way to make it simpler, is self-preservation. As long as that structure remains, they will allow the terrorism and all the rest of them to run riots. When those terrorists try to overthrow the state, like the Taliban did, or like they tried to do in Mali, when it comes to that point, that is when we will now see the depth of what the Nigerian government can do to sustain itself. Because the only way they can overthrow the Nigerian state and retain power is the terrorists. The only way the terrorists can overthrow the Nigerian state or Nigerian government and retain power is to suppress everybody in Nigeria, which is not possible. So they know it. The terrorists know it. The Nigerian government knows it. So what the Nigerian government is doing, the card it is playing, is that the terrorists constitute one part of its electoral strategy. Continue to create crisis all over the place, and we will present ourselves as the solution trying to combat it. So when they say they have repentant this, they have repentant that, it's like they are making a good faith deposit to the terrorists that, we won't tamper with you, just let the state remain. Now, if it happens that the terrorists, one way or the other, like I said, if they overthrow the state government, I mean the Nigerian government, and declare themselves the government, it depends on the different people what they want to do, whether they will accept them or not. Well, I doubt if they will accept them, but that will be when like Zimbabwe will say, when the comes to become, look, we know where we stand. So, but before then, I'm planning and looking towards that, and looking at the Afghanistan experience. The lesson for us is actually for those of us who think, or who are thinking that all we need to do is to go to the United Nations and the International Assembly, and they will come and support us to do what you heard what Hillary said. They armed these people to fight the Soviet Union. And once the Soviet Union left, they left them to their own devices. And these are the same people they are now fighting. So what the United States did in Afghanistan was not actually, back to the question of party politics or people's thing, not in the interest of the people of Afghanistan, but a geopolitical calculation. So if the United States finds that, and yes, they left, of course, they had been planning to leave all along. It was Trump that signed an agreement with Taliban to leave Afghanistan, even without the knowledge of the Afghan government. So this thing had been on for 2 years. It's just that it came at a rush at this time. So yes, the American government can deal with its own fallout wherever, when it arises. But then it also shows that the US government will not intervene anywhere due to the interests of the people concerned, but out of its own geopolitical calculation. So if you are talking about international support and all that, for what is in there for them, what are they coming to defend? And by the way, the US got involved in Afghanistan again, not because of any highfalutin idea. The first president of Afghanistan, I think his name is Karzai or something like that, was a refugee. He was living in the United States, and they organized something among themselves that they were able to persuade the State Department to support them so that they can take over Afghanistan. So they did it, and then, Karzai himself, I think he reigned for 1 or 2 times before he left, and then he just went back to his small business. So overall, the lesson is whether the terrorists in Nigeria are even contemplating to overthrow the government and take over power, there's also a geopolitical global context for Nigeria also. You have France that is dealing with Operation Bakani in its own, in the Sahel. So if anything happens like that, all sorts of things will happen. But what we are now saying is that for us, we should now, at least for the Yoruba people, we should now be very clear that, one, our salvation does not lie in any international conspiracy or international. Yes, they can support, we can engage them to support, but that should not even be the first port of call. That any political movement for liberation, national liberation or something, must have its own strategic objective beyond merely proclaiming sovereignty. Even all these countries that we are talking about that broke away from the Soviet Union and all that, they had their Poland utilizes Catholic relationship with the Vatican to sustain their opposition to Communist Party rule. That was why the Pope went to Poland to hold a mass, around that time and stuff like that. So the first thing is not just, this is not just about sloganeering and or romanticizing what an Odua nation would be, or what Odua nation can be, or what, the kind of people we are and all that. Yeah, they are all fine. But the cold reality is that it is a political movement. The whole question, the whole essence of sovereignty is a political issue. And we have to look at all the various factors that combine it and address it from that political issue. So one, if that's my own summation, if the government sees the terrorists and the criminals as its bulwark to sustain the Nigerian state, that regardless of what happens, they want to make sure that Nigeria remains in a particular direction, which again is what we call this unitarist system, which they claim to be a union. So as long as they can maintain that under any guise, yeah, the Nigerian government will be sustained and they will be continue and they will be fighting bandits and terrorists and this and that and that. But the essence of it is to make sure that Nigeria remains unitary, not one. There's a difference between making something one and making it unitary.
Unitary. Okay.
Yeah. So making it unitary under the hegemony of, the North in general, Northeast, Northwest, or combined. So as long as they can maintain that, then, terrorists can do their own thing. So when they now see that the political opposition that is coming from the rest of us are no longer a threat, then they can then ask the terrorists to, of course, they will have been integrated into various, and then they will sustain, and then it will, quote unquote, disappear. But if they see a threat to that unitarist establishment, then they can even encourage the terrorists to take over power. Because at that point, even if you claim that you don't want to fight, they will bring the fight to you. So you have to defend yourself one way or the other. So what we need to do, and how we need to do it, is to address that unitarist state over and above the terrorists. Because if they are foot soldiers, yes, the foot soldiers will exist, but you have to deal with the root. And the root is the unitarist government. And that is what we keep telling those who want to listen, that whatever we say, like what has happened in Afghanistan now, the Afghanistan government that the Taliban has taken over is a legitimate government. And you can see from what the United States government and all the rest are saying, they will deal with them. They will have to relate with them.
Yeah.
Of course, they will relate, they will work out things and all that. They will have lines they can't cross and lines they can cross and all that. They will negotiate all that. But they have recognized its legitimacy because it exists. So the Nigerian government exists as a legitimate government. And then it can play its game around that legitimacy. So if we don't address that legitimacy, or if we don't neutralize it, or, create, then we'll be forced to be fighting a sovereign, legitimate entity. And they have the terrorists as their front line of attack. They have the security agencies as their second line of attack and defense. And they have their international legitimacy as their third line. So what do we have? Or how do we proceed to address these issues? So if we, and like what has happened now, when they were doing all this, awareness campaign and all the rest of them and blah, blah, blah. Yes, they have now been cornered by, in a legal limbo, as it were. And they can continue that legal limbo for as long as they want. So some people are now saying, yeah, let us go to court and challenge the constitution and blah, blah, blah. Yes, they will allow you to file a motion or case in court, and it can stay there for the next 50 years. So in other words, everything that we do, as long as it falls within the ability of the legitimate government to sustain itself, they will always find a way around it until we get to the point where what we do challenges their legitimacy. And that is the essence of the whole thing. So, fortunately, or is it fortunately, for the Mujahideen and the people in Afghanistan, they pipe, they took their time and all that and all that. And when the government became unruly and stuff, and then Trump came with his withdrawal plan and all that, they saw an opportunity and then they just moved in. So, like Biden said, the only option they have is to send in more military, which they can do, and probably drive the Taliban back to Pakistan, and Pakistan relying on the US for its military hardware, and they will work it out, and US will remain there for the next 200 years. Whether they can sustain it or not, that's another question. But you see, that is the limit of military power, which would also inform on us in Nigeria as to the limit of state power if it is faced with an alternative, which also happened in Afghanistan.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. I'll show us this clip. This is from CBN Network. And it has to do with a report on Nigeria. I think it was released last year.
Okay.
And then we'll take it on after that.
All right.
Insurgency to try to overthrow the government and rid the country of Christians. Now human rights groups are asking the White House to stop the carnage. After losing ground in Syria and Iraq, the top general of U.S. Special Operations Command in Africa is warning that Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other Islamic terror groups are now trying to take over parts of the continent's most populous nation. Major General Dagvin Anderson says Muslim terrorists have set their sights on Nigeria's southern and northwestern regions, and the U.S. is now sharing specific intelligence with the country.
So this intelligence sharing is absolutely vital, and we stay fully engaged with the government of Nigeria to provide them an understanding of what these terrorists are doing.
Their goal? Eventually turn Nigeria into a Muslim country and force Christians, who make up half the country's population, to either leave or convert.
Christians are in the eye of the target, and they're coming after them.
And the numbers are staggering. August 6th, Muslims stormed 4 remote Christian villages in Kaduna State, killing 22 villagers. July 24th, 21 dead, scores injured, and several Christian homes destroyed by militants. July 19th, 19 people killed when assailants armed with guns and machetes attacked a wedding reception. And the list goes on. Leading human rights groups say what's going on in Nigeria is a genocide.
If you look at what's happened on the last 20 years, George, it's just massive number of attacks against Christians. Look, 50 to 70,000 have been murdered.
For years, the main terror group was Boko Haram, which seeks to overthrow the government here and create an Islamic state.
They go after Christians and moderate Muslims. They push a hard-line Muslim agenda. It is their intention to establish a caliphate and to just rid all of Nigeria and West Africa of any Western influence whatsoever.
Now, there's a new actor on the scene. In Nigeria's so-called Middle Belt region, where the Muslim North meets the Christian South, a terror group made up of Muslim Fulani herders are killing thousands of Christians. More than 1,400 Christians were hacked to death in just the first 7 months of 2020 by Fulani herders.
Unfortunately, this...
Right, welcome back. Now, one of the first thing that the new government, the Taliban government in Afghanistan, in their first statement was that it's not just only Afghanistan, they want to be an Islamic country, but also all the other countries as well, and that is Nigeria inclusive.
Yeah.
And we know, especially for people that are from Yoruba, that in almost all families, you have Christians, you have Muslims, you even have animists.
Yeah.
We don't take religion to the extreme, like it's happening in some other areas. Also, although Afghanistan has 60 tribes. I think that is quite small compared to the sort of the ones we have in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And is very unlikely, and I say that with caution, very unlikely that there will be an attempt to turn the entire citizen in Nigeria into Islam. But of course, there could be all these attacks, sustained attacks, and where people feel helpless because the government is not providing the security to for the people, as well as the people not being allowed to protect themselves. I mean, from several reports we've seen where even people who attempted to defend themselves were arrested by the security forces. So, two things here. We know that although these terrorists are using Islam religion, we know that even Muslims also have suffered so much with these killings and these bombings, just like the CBN reporter mentioned, that moderate Muslims are considered to be unbelievers.
Yep.
So now, what should our people that are Muslims in Yoruba land, what should they be doing now, or what should they do to maintain and sustain that cultural value of love, irrespective of religion, that has been existing within us Yoruba?
Yeah.
What should they be doing at this time? That's the first question. And secondly, we know that there will be a sort of infiltration also.
Yeah.
Maybe from those that are attempting to take. I think they might believe that it's easier for them to take over the north, where south might be the real problem, and they might not use the same strategy that they are using in the north to infiltrate and get into the southern part of the country. So, what should the rest of us be doing as well?
Okay.
So the first question is specifically for
Muslim
brothers and sisters, Yorubas, and then the other one is for the rest of us.
Yeah. I will start by looking at the development of these things in Nigeria and connect it, starting from my earlier statement. If we recall, when the Boko Haram started, they were supposed to be political enforcers of a politician and all that. And when they started, there was a time when they actually took over several local governments in Borno State and instituted their own government, as it were. But if we also recall, the moment they did that, the Nigerian government, I don't know whether it was under Yaradua or even this Buhari, I don't recall the exact time, they went in there and dislodged them. So all the local governments that the Boko Haram took over were taken over again by the Nigerian government, which proves the point that as long as the existence of the Nigerian government is not threatened, the Nigerian government will allow all these atrocities to take place so that it can sustain itself in power. So if we look at the trajectory of all the attacks and all that, it is still, none of these attacks have been reported to be against any government institution, as it were, except the schools, if we can put it that way. So it's either attacks against Christians, farmers, individuals, and all the rest of them. You haven't seen them attacking any security government agency right from the time they dislodged them from the northeast. So what does that tell us? That what they want is to make sure that there is perpetual distrust and division among the people on any lines, either religious or regional or ethno-national. You know, that can be going on, but the central government remains. But if they threaten the central government, they will probably react as they did when they took over the local governments in Borno State. So starting from there, so what should Nigeria? I listened to one of the major figures in Yoruba Muslim community, Alhaji Lateef Owoseni, I think. He is also a member of Ilana Omo Odua, you know, of Professor Akintoye. And he was a former, was it director or almost director of the National Shipping Line or something? But he was also he's also a foremost accountant. I think he was a former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria.
Right.
So he narrated a story that when they were going to have a managing director of the shipping line, it was a northern Muslim that truncated his promotion. They are both Muslims, so he is Yoruba, the other guy is Fulani or from the north. But the northern man essentially told him that they don't want a Yoruba there, whether you're a Muslim or not, it doesn't matter. So that to him was an offense that is even non-Islamic, and that he could see the national or ethno-national implication of their religion. So from there, he now said he's from Ijebu Ode, I think. They always have some kind of celebration in Ijebu Ode. And that he said he has some Christian friends who, when they were having whatever celebration, they will try to preach Jesus to him. And that he always gets offended when they preach Jesus to him. So when I heard that, my question is, okay, a Fulani Muslim prevented you as a Yoruba Muslim from reaching the heights of your profession simply because you are a Yoruba man. You of course, you took that as, you don't like it, but you know that there's a problem there.
Yes.
A Yoruba Christian from Ijebu Ode tries to preach Christ to you, and then you took offense. So why I brought that up is this, that the Islam had been in Yoruba land long before Usman Dan Fodio was born. That was Usman Dan Fodio that brought that particular brand of Islam to the north. And one of the problems between the Fulani and the Kanuri was the question of Islam, that who embraced Islam first. The Kanuri were claiming that they embraced Islam 1,000 years before the Fulani. So, and of course, the Kanuri were not defeated. But what we have seen in Nigeria is a quote-unquote a marriage of the Fulani and the Kanuri. First, we found it in, of course, in the politics of the First Republic, the governor of the northern region was Kanuri and the premier was Fulani. That's Ahmadu Bello and Kashim Ibrahim. And then we found it in the Abacha era, where Abacha was a Kanuri with a Kanuri mother or father and the Fulani mother or father. And then they settled in Kano.
Right.
And then he made Buhari his almost virtual second in command as the head of the PTF at that time.
Yes.
And and then Buhari also has a Fulani mother, Kanuri mother, Kanuri Fulani father, or something like that. They are just connected. So you can see the integration of the Kanuri and the Fulani into the Nigerian states that will be under their hegemony. So that being the case, you now look at Yoruba Muslims and say, well, this is not a story, it is a story because we read about it. It is a fact that we have been Muslims before they even became aware of what Islam is in the north. So there's no reason for Muslims, Yoruba Muslims, to be subservient to any other Muslim hierarchy in or outside Nigeria, for that matter. They can be on their own. Besides, Yoruba Muslims have been very, very instrumental, even in the development of the Western region, without being subservient to the Sultan or whoever it is. We had Alhaji W. Elias was Awolowo's very good friend at that time. His sister, Awolowo's sister, was a Muslim, Alhaja, I've forgotten her name now, Oshifeso, I think. And we had Saburi Biobaku, Fafunwa, and all the rest of them, Esogbadamosi, who were very much active in the development of Yoruba land and who played their parts. And of course, in those days, you know, we used to have very great football players, soccer players, Olowo Shodi, Ilerika, and all the rest of them that, you know, when Baptist College, Baptist Cards, and Zumratu, when they get into or Ahmadiyya College, Agege and stuff. So, and of course, Ismail and Joseph, the what you know, who arguably can be called the father of journalism in Nigeria, and Shafi Edu, who even went beyond. You know, we don't normally hear of climate conservationists in Africa, but Shafi Edu pioneered conservationism. You know, climate change and all the rest of them. He was a Muslim. So when it now comes to this stage, because we are disturbed by political developments, we now tend to see things in a binary fashion. You know, he's a Muslim, I'm a Christian. He's this, he's that. So, and unfortunately, both religions are not helping matters, in the sense that well, the Christians will preach their prosperity gospel and they will flaunt all the wealth they have in the world and all the things they can do. And then the Muslims will be, you know, because they tend to place emphasis on ascetic life, you know, so they are already seeing themselves as opposition to the conspicuous consumption they find in Christendom. And so, and then because again it goes back to the question you asked at the beginning of this program, people's interest or party interest. So you now have political parties that are created along religious, ethno-national divisions. So they will tell you if a Christian is a Muslim, I mean, if a chairman is a Muslim, a Christian must be a secretary, or the secretary must be a Christian. You can't have Muslim ticket. You can't have this and this. So the system that Nigeria is running is already entrenching these artificial divisions among the people by creating the lens from which we look at things. So it is now our responsibility to take back that lens and replace it with our own lens. No, I mean, when we are talking about Yoruba this, Yoruba that, most of the people that went on the awareness campaign of Yoruba nation, they are either Muslims, Christians, or traditional religionists. They did everything they were doing. They didn't look at what is the religion. But the intensity of the moment, the emotions of the moment, will not allow a sober address of these issues. That even the way we are talking, I understand Muslims in the south cannot even, in Lagos, Yoruba Muslims cannot even lead prayers in their own mosque if there is another Muslim present or something like that, whether it's true or not, but that's what we hear. When they want to declare holidays or sighting of the moon and stuff, they have to wait for instructions from the Sultan in Sokoto there. So all these things are byproducts of the kind of system. So the first question a Yoruba Muslim need to answer, just like a Yoruba Christian, but the first question they need to answer is whether our situation is better now than what it was when we had the Western region. If the answer is yes, then they can continue with what they have now. If the answer is no, then religion is not an issue. Because at that point in the Western, it was Awolowo that created the first Pilgrims Welfare Board for Muslims when they were for the pilgrimage. It was the Awolowo government that did it first. Well, that is one of the first in Africa that we had. It was the Awolowo government that did it. So that is the challenge. They have a challenge they have to address, which also goes beyond, although it includes it, but it goes beyond, the family thing in the Yoruba. We have this, we have that, we have that. Are Yoruba Muslims better off between 1959 or 1951 and 1959, and between 1979 and the present? Are we better off then than now? That answer will determine what they do. If the answer is no, we are not better off, we are even worse, then we have to do something about what is in existence. If the answer is yes, we are better off now than then, okay. That is left for them to do. But we have to be realistic and be objective and be alive to our responsibilities. There is a scholarly proof that language education in the mother tongue advances the development of a society. It was a Yoruba Muslim that conducted that experiment for Yoruba land, and that was Professor, what's his name again? I forgot his name. Aliyu Babatunde Fafunwa, who was a Muslim. And when he was doing it, we didn't even know he was a Muslim. Most of us didn't know that he was a Muslim. But he proved that point by doing the experiment in Ife. And then the experiment was successful. So the Yoruba Muslims have nothing to fear. They say you have nothing to fear except fear itself. But, the Yoruba Muslims have nothing to fear by questioning the relationship between them and their northern counterparts, as it were. And the example of Alhaji Owoseni proved it. It was a northern Muslim on the board of the supply company that prevented it. This was not now, it was in the 70s. So I think it was Obasanjo that was even in power at that time. And the man confirmed it in the presence of Obasanjo, according to him. So it's not we call it a ruju. So if a northern Muslim can do that to a Yoruba Muslim, then the Yoruba Muslim will now keep saying Islam binds them together. Yes, Islam binds them. Just like, in the Christendom, you have the same thing. You have someone like, who shall I use as an example? Jerry Falwell, for example, the moral majority in America. He was a Christian. He owns Liberty University. Well, he's dead now. His sons now own Liberty University. He calls himself a Christian. They call themselves Christians, but that doesn't mean we have to follow them.
Yes.
And there are so many examples that we can cite. So yes, we can claim to have any faith by whatever means, but then our responsibility comes into play when it comes to the demonstration of that faith. So when there was a time, one of the major Islamic journalists or Muslim journalists, Yoruba Muslim journalists, was saying that they should make somebody Sultan of Nigeria. That's the kind of thing that we are talking about. So if you make Sokoto the Sultan of Sokoto, the Sultan of Nigeria, what are you talking about? So as it is for the Muslims, it is also for the Christians. But we have a record, and we have God to thank for that. If you don't have a record between 1951 and 1959, the argument will be more severe than this. So all we need to do is to look at what we had. We are not saying it was perfect, but if it is better than what we have now, then all we need to do is, okay, how do we make these things better?
That's it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean.
So that's for the. Would it be the same thing for the rest of us?
Yes, that's why, for both for the Christians and the Muslims. Yes, that yes, we read all these things, we hear all these things, we do all these things, but the bottom line, like I said, is from which perspective are we looking at it? That if we take our minds back, when the Boko Haram people took over almost 14 or 15 or even more local governments in Borno State,
yes,
the Nigerian government did not waste time in driving them out. So a Nigerian government, I don't know who was in power at that time, they did that to sustain themselves in power. But now they are allowing them to run riots. And that can only mean that as long as their power is sustained, retained, yes, they can be doing all these things so that we can divide among ourselves. And if you look at the kind of resistance we have been having in Benue State, they used to have some kind of, I forgot it's the Kino or Kono or something like that. The herders will attack the farmers will attack the herders, they will do this, they will do that. And then, but we hardly see the herders or the terrorists attacking any military formation or police formation.
Right.
In the East, well, they say that IPOB attacks police formation, but you see what the response is. Once the question is attacking a state apparatus, the police or the court or anything, whether it was IPOB or not, we don't know. Maybe fifth columnists do it because the national security advisor to Jonathan, who died in a plane crash with the former deputy or governor of Plateau State, who also happened to be a Christian, said that Boko Haram is in government.
Yes, in government, yes.
He said it's in government, they are in government. So with that, and he wouldn't be just blowing his mouth, just like that. So with that, the essence of the government is self-preservation. So as long as we leave them alone, they will leave you alone. And then when they leave you alone, the terrorists can go around and they'll be conducting money and collecting ransom and will be shouting, the Muslims have come, the herders have come, we should defend ourselves, we should do this, we should do that. And the government is okay, fine. When the elections come, just vote us back into power, which comes back to legitimacy. So the issue is for both, for all of us, that if we see all these trends, then we know that attacking each other, especially in Yoruba land, attacking Christians or Muslims or making it a religious issue is self-defeatist. One, because it flies against the face of our cultural existence, like you said. There's no, each family has one or the other. It flies against our historical experience. We have the 51, 59, experience where everybody played their own part. So there's no reason for any Yoruba Christian or Muslim to be looking at this thing from a religious essence, but from the national or ethno-national essence. Because if you are a Muslim and you don't follow, again, okay, Saudi Arabia is a Sunni Muslim, Iran is it Sufi or whatever.
Yes,
they are at loggerheads with each other. That's why you see Buhari running riot against the Zaki people, the Shiites, because he's Sunni and all that. So even if you look at it from that prism, at the end of the day, it will still come down to who is Sufi, who is Sunni, depending on who has power.
That is it.
So we should look at the depth of it, at the power, where the power is coming from, and where the power that is sustaining it is coming from. So if the worst case scenario, Saudi Arabia backs Buhari and Iran backs Zia, so we'll still be fighting a foreign war among ourselves. And then they will come to Lagos. Okay, who is Sunni? Who is this? So we should. I mean, you can practice your faith, your religion in any way that is acceptable to whoever you are worshiping.
That is it. Thank you very much, sir. We'll be going just for a short break, and then when we come back, we'll take the last segments of this interview. And of course, we'll be talking about the petition. You know, the petition, the main thing. So that's why we restart that for that period. So, right, viewers, thanks for staying with us. We will be coming right back for the last segment of this interview. Please do stay on with us. OYTV. Right, welcome back. We are just right at the last segment of the interview for today, and we'll be talking about the Yoruba referendum petition. I still have Alagba Femi Odedeyi here with me in the studio. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Alagba Femi Odedeyi. Now we are coming to the Yoruba referendum petition. Now, before taking my question, I'm going to play this video. It's a parliament. It's from our parliament here, and I want to play it so that you can relate the importance of our people engaging with their representatives, the members of the states houses of assembly, in order to press forward what we want. So,
Afghanistan shows you can't deliver democracy with bomb and bullets.
In Afghanistan, this House has an obligation to learn its lessons and to ensure its mistakes are never repeated. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to start by stating a hard but clear truth that some in this House do not want to hear. The 20-year war on Afghanistan was a mistake of catastrophic proportions, causing untold human tragedy. 240,000 people killed, men, women and children, tens and thousands of innocent Afghan civilians, and 457 British personnel. This House must never again send British service personnel to die in futile wars. Mr. Deputy Speaker, rather than repeating the mistakes of the past, we must learn this lesson for the future. The West cannot build liberal democracies with bombs and bullets. That dangerous fantasy, cooked up by neoconservative fanatics in Washington and championed by their faithful followers in London, has brought untold death and destruction to Afghanistan, to Iraq, to Libya and many other places in wars that have made us all unsafe. So today, we must rid ourselves of the delusion that the answer to failed intervention is yet more intervention, and dispense with the belief that freedom abroad and safety at home can be won through wars and regime change. Mr. Deputy Speaker, after all of this bloodshed, we have a special duty to the people of Afghanistan. Today, as Afghans flee for their lives, with heartbreaking images of people desperately clinging onto planes, hoping that the sky is safer than the land, and Afghan asylum seekers already here, they must be provided with unconditional amnesty. And on this issue, I want to raise with the government again the case of my constituent Jamal and his father. Jamal was a translator for the British Army for 6 years, and his father worked as a gardener in a British base. While Jamal made it safely to Coventry, a proud city of sanctuary, his father has been denied relocation and is still in Afghanistan in grave danger. I've written to the Secretary of State, but I haven't received a reply. So today, I urge the government to act immediately and provide safe passage for Jamal's father and all Afghans who are facing that threat from the Taliban. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the war on Afghanistan was the first war on terror. I was just 7 years old when British airstrikes hit that country. The now Prime Minister, a few years later, wrote, and I quote, "We are in Afghanistan to teach them the value of democracy." Today, after 20 years of bloodshed, it is incumbent on us to learn that democracy cannot be bombed into existence, that American military might is no friend of freedom, and to ensure that this first war on terror is Britain's last war of aggression. Thank you.
which is ongoing. We've seen in that video how we have the people representative, and we're also able to see the environment of the parliament. I hope you're hearing me, sir.
Yes, I can hear you now, but not from the beginning. But go ahead. I can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So now the part of this is that, of course, we're going to take a sort of a progress report on the petition.
Yeah.
But also maybe a sort of a word or a direction for our people.
Yes.
That if they don't do anything, there will be consequence.
Yeah.
Or consequences. And if they also take action, there will be results. And I think when people take action, we don't call it consequences. So there will be results. And that the houses of assembly, especially in Yoruba land,
yes,
is there not just for those representatives, but for the people. To be able to take their matters into the houses, for them to listen and do the needful. So that would be the second one, because I just wanted to take this together. So the first one would be about the progress of the petition. The second one is to speak to our people why it's very important for them to take actions.
Yes.
Because doing nothing has consequence.
Yes.
Then the third one, and this is also very important, that even for those people that are not Yoruba,
yes,
if Yoruba is able to have a breakthrough, it could be something that will benefit the entire country.
Yep.
Because just like you've mentioned on this program before, when Western region was about to start the free education,
yes,
the other regions were saying that it's not possible.
Yeah.
But Chief Obafemi Awolowo and his people, they went ahead and made that happen. And that free education benefited a whole lot of people from across the country, whether they are from the east or from the west or from the north. I mean, people can say today that they benefited from that program, whether those people that came down to the Western region or people that took that initiative with the template back into their own zones.
Yes.
So I want you to deal with those three.
Okay. Can you hold on a second?
Okay.
There's a technical issue here.
No, that's okay. If you want to, you could exit and then come back in. That should be fine.
Yes, let me
If that will resolve it.
Okay.
Viewers, please bear with us. We'll get Alagba Femi or Odedeyi back into the studio as soon as.
èrò tíra dé mi ẹ bá mi kí bàbá mi. ààrẹ afẹ́ babalọ́lá aláṣẹ Agba University ládó Èkìtì.
Right, I think you are back here.
I'm back. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, do you get those 3 points, or you want me to repeat it, sir?
Yes, you can repeat it just for the. Yes.
Oh, so thank you. So the first one is the progress of the petition.
Okay.
While the second one is the importance of people getting involved and taking action on this.
Okay.
You know, looking at all the things we've spoken about, including reports about possible infiltration into the southern part of the country by terrorists and co. Then, of course, thirdly, looking at the fact that even for people that are not Yoruba, because some people might think that why are the Yoruba trying to do things alone or on their own? But just to let those people know that just the same way we are the free education in the Western region today, because it was even difficult to do it, you know, but because we were able to do it successfully, other people benefited from it. So it could be the same thing, that if we are able to go through this and get the structure back to how it should be, then it will eventually benefit all Nigerians. I mean, if that is your view, so I'll leave you to with those 3, sir.
Yeah, the 3 questions are connected in this sense. Okay. Yes, I think we are getting up to 11,000 signatures now. And like we said, we are sending it to the state houses of assembly every 5,000, but we have even gone beyond that and said that we will be sending it intermittently to all of them in physical form, in direct form, so that they will know. So that is just one of the practical ways of getting it across to the state houses of assembly. Now, for the second and third part, which is connected, is that, like you said, the assembly does not exist only for the political parties. And we have said that, yes, okay, we voted for these people because we delegated some powers to them to represent us. So if we delegate some powers to them to represent us, then it is incumbent on us to be able to tell them what we want them to do for us, because they are supposed to be our representatives. So that is the import of that petition. And you know, like we said, when the governors went to the assembly to present their petition, we said, okay, why didn't you ask us our input into this thing before you went ahead? So that is the import of the petition, to get us, because if we don't take care of our own issues, if we don't express our desires and aspirations, nobody will express it for us, regardless of whether we vote for them or not. So that is that. Then, in terms of connection, I mean, benefiting you see, everybody in Nigeria is now saying people should defend themselves. The terrorists are taking over. They should defend themselves. Let's even leave the government aside. That is the central government, whether they are just using that to sustain themselves or not. Let's leave that argument aside and say, okay, people should defend themselves. How should people defend themselves? You have armed people coming in. The only way you can defend yourself is to arm yourself. Or, yes, arm yourself, legally or illegally. So when you have a state house of assembly that cannot legislate and implement self-defense, calling on people to for self-defense or to defend themselves is a futile exercise. Because you can't just say people, oh, yeah, go and defend yourself without providing the mechanism for it. Otherwise, why are you a government? So if the state government cannot raise up its own security agencies and blah, 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 and then they ask people to defend themselves, then they should create a mechanism for their doing so. We say, okay, they have Amotekun and all the rest, but we say, okay, you have Amotekun, at least even symbolically, Amotekun exists for security, symbolically. Okay, so if that is the case, then you don't need to call people to arm them to defend themselves. All you need to do is to make sure Amotekun performs the role it was set up for. So, but you don't even find that. But they keep saying we should defend ourselves, we should arm ourselves, we should do this. So what we are now saying with the petition is that, one, the assembly people should wake up to their responsibilities by passing that thing into law so that we can use it to arm ourselves to make the demand that we want to make. And that is very basic. That is very fundamental in any democratic environment. And so we are making, our own progress, but unfortunately, I keep saying, and this is not to disparage the Yoruba Nation rallies and stuff like that, but I keep saying all those rallies, if they are taking place in a state assembly complex, they meet at the state assembly and take their rally and demand that kind of petition and submit it to them right there. Now, the central government can send the police and the soldiers to go and disperse them. But if they do that, then they will have to disperse the assembly itself, even if they don't legislate it out of existence. Because, if they are telling the people that voted the assemblymen to office that they cannot congregate on the assembly to make a demand, then the whole enterprise about democracy is finished. By all this law and order, they can't. If you go to the State House of Assembly, if we congregate at the State House of Assembly to make a demand on our assemblymen, that cannot be construed as a breakdown of law and order. Of course, they will say we want to break down law and order. But what we are saying is that they will have to disperse everybody from that assembly. And, so like you said, not doing anything has a consequence, but doing something has a result. So what results are we expecting? The result is simply that we are taking back the power that had been taken away from us. That is the power to make our own decisions. So if our representatives at the assembly refuse to go along with us after repeated demands, we can do anything we want to do, but that's not the topic for discussion today. So what we are and when the people see that, like in Benue, Plateau, and Southern Kaduna states, where the governor will be crying and everybody will be saying, but they refuse to empower the people to defend themselves. Now that doesn't. I'm not saying they should supply them with arms. If they want to, they can do that, but that's not even what we are saying. So if the governor or the governors in those areas know and really want the people to resolve their problem, political empowerment of the people is the first step. And what is the political empowerment? Ask them what they want. And based on what they want, act on it. It's as simple as that. But you don't find the governors doing that. But they will be crying on TV that 100 people have been killed today, 10,000 people have been killed yesterday. We are going to do mass burial tomorrow. Because it's good optics. It's good political optics. When you see a governor crying, he won't be the first one crying. I think one governor in Imo State was crying like that in the 80s. So what we are saying is the disempowerment, the political disempowerment of the people is what is allowing terrorism to run rampant. So the moment the people become engaged in taking their own decisions as to what we want. Even before Amotekun, there was a big rally in Adamasingba, Ibadan, when they were calling for Amotekun and all the rest before Amotekun was eventually passed into. So if that kind of thing can take place, that is empowerment, not only for the Western region, but for the West, but for the rest of the country also, that people taking back what had been taken away from them, which is political empowerment. And this is not a question of political party alliance or, identification. It's simply a question of national existence. And then when we get empowered, because the political parties are not empowering us to do that, that is why we came up to get the people empowered to make the demand. That is the purpose of the petition. That is the purpose of getting them to know that, okay, well, this is, and of course, all the people that signed the petition were scattered all over the world and all that. But, at least it's a significant section of Yoruba people all over the world that is saying, okay, do this. And we are not asking for them to set up an army or set up. We are just saying conduct a referendum for us to decide this is how we want to live with the rest of the country. And the rest of the country can benefit from it by also making the same or similar demands, getting themselves together and organizing what they want. And they don't need the central government to do that for them. We need our own representatives to do it for us, and that will show when the crying governor cries again. The people will say, yes, that is a genuine cry. But if you don't empower them politically and you start crying when the consequences come, then it's a false cry. So we need to, this is if one can use that expression, a life and death situation. And we just need to position ourselves where we belong in the whole enterprise. So if we succeed, or let me put it that way, when we succeed with the Yoruba referendum, because we are going to succeed with it, there's no doubt about that, regardless of what is going on. When we succeed with it, other people in Nigeria, that is the other peoples in Nigeria, will see the sense in what we are doing. And they will be able to also mount pressure on their own governments, regional or local, to do similar things. At the end of the day, the central government will just be left. Maybe they can be governing themselves in Abuja, or I don't know. But they will just be left in a limbo. Or then they will come with their whole military enterprise and then say they want to suppress everybody. And then we see how that one will get us. And but the first thing to be done is retaking back what. And if you look at the world, we don't even need to look at all the Scotland, Quebec, and all the rest, even the United States. Regardless of the ups and downs of the civil rights and the achievement of the gains of the black people and stuff like that, it was only possible, they achieved what they achieved only because the people took back what was taken away from them. Whether the Brown versus, the desegregation, the civil rights movement, The everyday people marched, they went to the thing, and so, and even it was these marches and all the rest that got quite a lot of them into the House of Representatives and the various states of assemblies in the US for black people. So it's not something that is coming out of the blues, and it's not simply because, okay, yeah, Scotland, this and that. Yeah, we can learn from them. We learn from everybody. But the basic thing is take back what has been taken away from you, even if it is by your own people. Okay. And that is the essence of the referendum itself.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Yes. I believe that viewers are taking those things in. And as Nigeria works towards 2023, some people have said there will not be any election. Some people have said, yeah, they're expecting something to happen before the 2023 election. Whether the Afghanistan case now, we had a little bit to the different narratives. As time goes on, we'll get to know.
Sorry, just to chip in this. You see, it's also part of our responsibility to make sure that the Afghan experience impacts on the realities that we are facing. So the politicians are not the only ones. I'm not even being specific about Yoruba land. Yes. The Yoruba politicians are not the only ones with the capacity to address these issues. We, the people, that expression, we, the people, also have the capacity to make that determination and let them know. Because if we don't let them know of our capacity, they will just take us for granted, which is what has been happening all over since, not because of this regime, it's been happening since the military takeover. They took over on behalf of us. They claim that we are fellow citizens and they are doing this. They messed everything up. Then they gave to the civilians. They messed everything up. And so it's not just this current administration. It's been, unlike we keep saying, we had the action group. What did they do when they were in the Egbe? They went about and said, okay, let us look at who are the Yoruba people? Who are we? What can we do? And it was a Muslim that was tasked with that responsibility, Saburi Biobaku, to look at the history of Yoruba. And then they came out, okay, this is who we are. Let us do this thing. And that was what they so that is the first thing that we need to do. So we don't need to, whether one politician says this or that, that's his own problem. We need to say what we need to say and take the stand we need to take with the support or in opposition to any politician.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just said, let me steal part of your to chip that.
No, it's better because it's like driving the message home, so that people don't just sit and say, okay, the politician will sort it out.
Yeah,
we've left things in their hands for too long.
Yeah,
and especially where we are now, where even the voice of agitation and liberation has been short.
Yeah,
people should know that now you may not be able to go out into the streets to protest or enter the bush like Sunday Igboho or others, but you can still engage your representative, ward representative at the state houses of assembly, to let them know that there's a petition, a referendum bill with them, and we need it passed. And it's just simply that we want to have a right of say.
Yes. We can write them, we can call them, we can send text to them, we can even go and start collecting letters and dumping it in their offices. Do anything we can do to let them know that we are serious about this thing.
And like we said, it's very important to start now before they start the campaign and they bring rice. They bring bag of rice or Congo of Mudu, was it Mudu of Gari or something, to get votes from us. So something that we should get engaged in.
Yes. So we have something So when they come with their rice or gari or whatever, we show them the petition.
That is
Take
it.
your gari. This is what we want.
That's what we want.
That is our own gari to you. So you bring your gari to us, we give you your petition, we give it to you. So they will know that, yes, we are actually demanding, we are actually asking for this thing.
For this thing.
Yes.
So, thank you very much, sir. Viewers, we are always with Alagba Femi Odedeyi every two weeks. So we'll be having him again in another 2 weeks. Always check Yoruba Referendum Committee on Facebook. You always get the link to the petition that is ongoing there for Yoruba Referendum. Is a bill that is with the Southwest Yoruba states of Nigeria, and the petition is for these lawmakers and the governors to make the bill into a law so that you and I could have a date to see what we want, how we want to live within Yoruba land. When we resolve that, then we can be thinking about the entire Nigeria.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, sir, and we hope to have you in another 2 weeks. Our regards to your family.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening. And all our efforts will not go in vain, but but stand with the assurance that what we are seeking for will be achieved, because it's simply what needs to be achieved.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, viewers, that's us for today. We will definitely be coming back on. Remember, you can catch up with us on Saturdays at 3 p.m. and on Sunday at 6 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube Live. Our regular viewers, our apologies again. You are unable to see me. That's the first one. But of course, apologies for yesterday, because also we were unable to stream live yesterday. We are working on the system, and of course, we'll promise you that we'll be back stronger and better. So do enjoy the rest of the weekend, and of course, do have a wonderful and fruitful week. God bless.